meant. Do you stand by that statement you made on March 13th?
We have untied the hands of our warfighters. We fight to win, and we follow the law.
Okay, so you're not clarifying. So you stand by that statement. So you're the Secretary of Defense. The things you say matter. And your response here, right now, makes it clear to the American people exactly why you are not right for this job.
Boom. Straight to the point. No punches pulled. That was the exact second Senator Mark Kelly locked eyes with Pete Hegseth and unequivocally stated, "You are entirely unqualified to hold the office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense. I need the whole nation to pay close attention to this footage." It is incredibly rare in congressional history to see a high-ranking figure like Pete Hegseth floundering and trapped so thoroughly by Mark Kelly's airtight logic. This goes far beyond a standard budget dispute. Kelly essentially delivered a final warning to the committee, dismantling Hegseth's dodging tactics. They are directly addressing a deadlocked war, a careless $100 billion munitions tab, and, most alarmingly, Pete Hegseth uttering words that seemingly breach the very laws of armed conflict. Let's see exactly how Kelly pins Hegseth down and starts tearing into this astronomical bill.
Chairman, gentlemen, thank you for being here. Secretary Hegseth, safe to say that our weapons like SM-3s, Tomahawks, Patriot missiles have capabilities that are unmatched. That's why they cost a lot, take a long time to produce. Your budget requests $31.8 billion to expand production capacity for critical missile stockpiles. Is that correct? 31.8?
I'm looking at $53 billion for munitions acceleration over 14 critical munitions, of which the ones you listed are a part.
Okay,
so I believe more than that. Yes, sir.
More than 20 billion more. So we've been working together to grow the industrial base because we're all worried about how our stockpiles would hold up in a conflict against China. Since the start of this war, you've made it a point to highlight the number of strikes the U.S. military is carrying out, citing that more than 13,000 targets had been struck as of April 8th. On March 2nd, you said, and this is a quote, "This was a massive, overwhelming attack across all domains of warfare, striking more than 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours. On March 10th, you said, "Yet again, our most intense day of strikes inside of Iran." On April 6th, you said, and this is another quote, "The largest volume of strikes since day one of this operation." Your department has released video after video of things blowing up. None of us doubt the strength of the U.S. military and their ability to do hard things. I understand that better than anybody. The questions we should be asking and answering are, what does this cost us and what does it achieve for the American people? Many of these strikes use our best weapons, and we're using a lot of them and a lot of interceptors. Open source reporting has estimated that the military has used an outrageous number of Patriots. I'm not even going to say the numbers, but a lot of Patriots, a lot of THAAD rounds, JASSM-ER, Tomahawks, very expensive, exquisite. We can't make these munitions overnight, and it's clear from your budget request that you know that. Can you tell us how many years?
We're looking at a colossal invoice that Secretary Hegseth appears desperate to avoid. Kelly came armed with the indisputable facts. The Pentagon has been bragging about striking upwards of 13,000 targets, constantly publishing footage of massive explosions. But Kelly highlighted a critical vulnerability. We are deploying our priciest, top-tier interceptors, like Patriots, Tomahawks, and JASSM-ASMs, to eliminate these threats. When Kelly pushed Hegseth for a precise timeline and price tag to rebuild this shrinking strategic reserve, the Defense Secretary had to confess to an alarming figure, one that blows past any normal financial projection.
Specifically, is it going to take to replace these systems?
Senator, thank you for the question. I would defer to the comptroller on the amount because I think it's a lot higher than 53. If you look at long-range fires, JASSMs, LRASMs, Tomahawks, we're looking at $238 billion.
Okay,
we're looking at $40 billion for hypersonic. So I actually think it's closer to $330 billion in munitions.
Okay, how many years to replenish? That's the question.
I think that's exactly the right question, too, Senator, because the time frame we were existing under was unacceptable.
Okay, well,
and
tell
what this
me,
budget does, I mean, months and years, fast.
Years?
I mean, we're building new plants in real time.
So just to replace what we have
2x,
expended.
I said months.
It wasn't the $31.8 billion originally asked for. The true cost for weaponry is nearing a staggering $330 billion. Hegseth was forced to concede that America will need years to construct new factories, merely to restock what we've already fired. It's a brutal wake-up call that our military-industrial capacity is being pushed to the breaking point. Let's contextualize that $330 billion. These aren't simply theoretical digits on a Department of Defense ledger. This is public funding. It's your hard-earned cash. At a time when households across the country are fighting to buy basic groceries, dealing with unprecedented interest rates, and seeing their community infrastructure decay, Washington is handing a blank check to defense contractors. The cost of a single Patriot missile carries a price tag of $2 to $4 million. Whenever we launch one to swat down an inexpensive drone, we are effectively incinerating American tax revenue over the desert. And Hegseth's nonchalant remark that we require 2 to 3, 4 times our current inventory guarantees this economic hemorrhage will only speed up. However, Senator Kelly didn't just linger on the fiscal damage. He unveiled the most devastating reality of this whole operation.
They allocated elsewhere.
Okay, I got it. So
and
we
we're
fired
rapidly doing
years
it quickly.
worth of munitions. And it is clear that these are being expended to try to achieve some objectives. That was the plan. But, Mr. Secretary, this war is stuck. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. The Iranian regime is in place. The nuclear material still in their hands. Americans are being crushed by higher costs, and it's not clear to them at all what the goal of this war is.
A tactical assessment that is as sharp as a scalpel. We've exhausted years of ammunition reserves, but the tangible achievements on the battlefield equate to zero. The Strait of Hormuz remains blocked. The Iranian government is still firmly in power. Their nuclear ambitions are entirely unscathed. When the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, the fallout isn't contained to the Middle East. It hits your bank account directly. Roughly 20% of the globe's oil travels through that tight bottleneck. Blocking it translates to exploding gas prices at the pump, runaway inflation, and fractured supply networks worldwide. This goes beyond a battlefield gridlock. It is an economic chokehold on everyday Americans. Despite this, the Pentagon is demanding extra time, extra funding, and extra weaponry while lacking any logical exit plan. In the meantime, who foots the bill? It's America's working and middle classes, collapsing under a heavy tax load to bankroll a forever war devoid of a defined objective. At this moment, Kelly springs the trap. He shifts his offensive from military blunders to a vastly graver concern: the ethical integrity and adherence to international law by the Pentagon's top brass.
So, I've got about a minute, and I want to go to another topic. I saw your hearing yesterday, and I'm going to give you one more chance to address a question here. It's my understanding that the definition of no quarter is that legitimate offers of surrender will be refused, or that detainees will be executed. Is that your understanding of the definition?
The only entity that would kill detainees or target civilians is the Iranians, and they're the ones being crushed.
So
it's the Iranian military and their military capability.
The question is,
I disagree completely with your articulation.
No, do you understand the definition that I just read you? Because that's the definition from your department's law of war manual.
Much like holding up the Constitution as undeniable proof, Kelly weaponized the Defense Department's very own law of war manual to grill the man leading the agency. He zeroed in squarely on Hegseth's remarks from March 13th, where he proclaimed, "No quarter, no mercy for our enemies." Within military jargon and global law, giving no quarter isn't just motivational rhetoric. It has a horrifying legal meaning, denying valid surrender attempts or putting prisoners of war to death. Kelly posed an incredibly basic query: do you comprehend the legal standard established by the department you run? Watch closely as Hegseth squirms, pivoting the blame to Iran, flatly refusing to give a straight yes or no. Kelly refuses to let him slide.
Is that your understanding? And I'm gonna just get to the point here.
We fight to win and we follow the law, Senator.
Okay, so your quote was, "We will keep pushing, keep advancing, no quarter, no mercy for our enemies. And yesterday, you did not clarify whether you stand by this statement. So I'm going to give you another opportunity to clarify if that is what you meant. Do you stand by that statement you made on March 13th?
Hegseth defaults to regurgitating a hollow political catchphrase, "We have untied the hands of our warfighters, we fight to win," rather than offering the accountable answer expected from a cabinet secretary. When the leader of the Defense Department lacks the courage to clarify or retract his own words about a potential war crime, the illusion of authority and justice totally falls apart. Kelly's devastating final remark, which you saw at the beginning of the video, serves as the ultimate judgment on that dodging. Secrecy and a reliance on double talk constantly pave the way for catastrophic choices, whether it involves setting fire to $330 billion of public funds in a dead-end war, or tossing aside the fundamental principles of armed conflict. This establishment proves they are eager to transform the military into a cash-burning engine that delivers zero actual security to the public. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about a defense secretary who won't clarify comments regarding the execution of detainees? Is a person like this fit to remain at the helm of the U.S. military? Has Senator Mark Kelly's intense confrontation exposing this $330 billion receipt altered how you view this ongoing conflict? Don't forget to subscribe to the Reality Report so you never miss our hard-hitting factual breakdowns. The truth demands to be seen.
Ms. McNeil, would you rather have a fully funded TSA or ICE agents assisting TSA at airports during a shutdown?
I would like to have all the hardworking men and women of the Department of Homeland Security be paid for the work.
That wasn't my
they're doing.
question.
In the history of U.S. congressional hearings, there are moments when a brief exchange encapsulates the weight of an entire era of institutional crisis. The mere 5-minute exchange between Representative Dan Goldman and Ms. McNeil, representing the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, is precisely one such moment. Unfolding in the eye of the government shutdown storm, this interrogation transcended the boundaries of a routine committee meeting to become a detailed autopsy of the Washington bureaucracy. It exposed a sobering reality. When legislative gridlocks cannot be resolved through negotiation, those in power are willing to use the security of the national defense system and the livelihoods of tens of thousands of civil servants as leverage. By deploying immigration and customs enforcement, ICE personnel, to substitute for TSA agents, the executive branch inadvertently triggered a profound debate on the limits of power. This article will delve into each layer of the interrogation to paint a comprehensive picture of the true cost of political polarization. The curtain of the hearing was raised, not with diplomatic introductions, but with a checkmate maneuver. Representative Dan Goldman engineered an airtight binary question. Would you rather have a fully funded TSA or ICE agents assisting TSA at airports during a shutdown? This question was a brutal test for a mid-level official's position. For Ms. McNeil, choosing either side meant crossing a red line. Supporting TSA funding and rejecting ICE was an act of direct defiance against the White House's hardline border security agenda. Conversely, admitting the necessity of ICE would be a declaration of the failure and futility of the very civil security organization she represented. This dilemma forced the TSA representative to seek refuge behind the familiar linguistic shield of the bureaucracy. I would like to have all the hardworking men and women of the Department of Homeland Security be paid for the work. This is a classic evasion technique, answering a safe question about welfare rather than confronting a thorny policy issue. However, Goldman instantly shattered that shield with a cold interruption. That wasn't my question. This decisive intervention stripped away any room for ambiguity. Under relentless pressure, Ms. McNeil's reluctant admission that TSA performing its own duties was the ideal state officially confirmed the temporary, patchwork, and deeply flawed nature of the decision to bring ICE into airports.
So you're happy to have ICE there, even though, as far as we can tell, there are videos of them standing around, yawning, eating candy bars, or tackling someone and arresting a woman in front of her daughter in the San Francisco airport.
The second layer of the crisis reveals a fundamental issue regarding the rule of law, the deliberate conflation of executive agency functions. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, is a massive conglomerate, but its internal agencies possess entirely distinct operational limits. The TSA was designed as a civil preventive force. Their strength lies not in firepower, but in administrative screening protocols, risk identification, and crowd management. Their boundary of interaction with the public is a boundary of safety. Meanwhile, ICE is a highly militarized law enforcement machine. Their duties are tied to suppression campaigns, transnational crime sweeps, and the execution of deportation orders, tasks that require an offensive mindset and the authority for physical restraint. Reassigning agents carrying lethal weapons and holding the power of criminal arrest to checking domestic passengers' IDs is a severe violation of the norms governing civil spaces. By citing field videos, Goldman pointed out the counterproductive dissonance of this decision. ICE personnel either displayed apathy and a lack of expertise in screening, yawning, eating candy, or brought excessive violent habits into the airport environment. The incident of tackling a woman in front of her child in San Francisco, McNeil's defense that ICE was adhering to standard operating procedures, SOP, ignored a basic psychological truth. When the person checking your ID is carrying a gun and has the power to strip you of your freedom, it is no longer an aviation security checkpoint. It has morphed into an intimidating interrogation.
Right? Let's listen to Senator Kennedy on Fox News, if we could play the clip.
The Democrats have offered to open up everything but ICE. Ted and I said, okay, let's accept their offer. And then at the same time, we would offer a bill for reconciliation where we don't need any Democratic votes to do whatever we wanted to do with ICE. And that way we're out of the shutdown and DHS is back open. We submitted that, Senator Cthulhu submitted that to President Trump, as is his right. He said no deals with the Democrats.
The drama of the hearing reached its zenith when Representative Goldman pivoted from dissecting policy to unmasking political motives. He employed a sophisticated rhetorical technique using the opposition's own words to dismantle their argument via a taped interview with Republican Senator John Kennedy. For a long time, the public was led to believe that TSA employees going without pay was an unforeseen accident caused by legislative gridlock, with lawmakers frequently taking to the media to express their condolences. However, Senator Kennedy's tape recounted an entirely different behind-the-scenes reality. The Democratic Party had, in fact, provided a key to unlock the stalemate, a comprehensive funding bill for the entire government, temporarily setting aside the controversial ICE budget for separate negotiations. This was a flawless legislative off-ramp. Senator Kennedy even recognized its potential, proposing to restore government operations first, after which Republicans could use the budget reconciliation mechanism, the Senate, to self-fund IC without relying on the opposition. But all efforts at compromise were crushed by a single command from President Donald Trump: no deals. This evidence serves as an undeniable indictment, proving that the destitution of tens of thousands of security personnel was not a systemic error. It was a manufactured crisis, where one branch of power was willing to maintain the paralysis of the state apparatus to maximize negotiating pressure for a narrow political agenda. The brilliance of Goldman's analysis did not stop at intellectual sparring. It touched the depths of social consequences and strategic security. The cruelest aspect of the government shutdown was the betrayal of the labor contract between the state and its direct protectors. Goldman emphasized a heartbreaking reality. When America's security gatekeepers are forced to abandon their posts, to take on second jobs just to maintain basic meals for their families, it represents a moral failure of the government. This financial stress eroded the focus and professional capacity of TSA personnel, making the use of ICE as a stopgap a merely cosmetic countermeasure that could not replace the in-depth risk assessment chain. More alarmingly, Goldman deliberately directed public attention to a forgotten defensive sector, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, while politicians poured their energy into arguing over physical border walls. The government shutdown forced top federal cybersecurity experts into unpaid leave. The decision to cling to a political negotiation threw open the doors of the national cyberspace, leaving the U.S. power grid, databases, and information infrastructure defenseless against foreign hackers. This strategic vulnerability far exceeded the temporary inconveniences at airport terminals. Representative Goldman's conclusion was a masterclass in pacing and the allocation of responsibility. Instead of pushing outrage to the limit to personally attack the witness, he lowered his voice, expressing genuine empathy for the hardships TSA leadership was facing. This pivot served to separate the victimhood of the executing apparatus from those who actually held the decision-making power. The advice that closed the hearing, "That is why you ought to call your boss, President Trump," was not a mere administrative suggestion. It was a spectacular redirection of accountability. Goldman understood that a mid-level official could not sway the will of the Oval Office. This statement was intended to send a powerful message to the American people. In the structure of a democracy, accountability cannot be dispersed or pawned off on subordinates. The individual holding the highest veto power must stand up and take responsibility for the structural damage and the security risks and the economic losses caused by their decisions. This 5-minute hearing elevated itself beyond the framework of a standard news event to become a valuable case study in public administration. By peeling back every layer, from evasive language and the blurring of executive functions to the calculated negotiations behind closed doors, Rep. Dan Goldman pointed out a grim truth. Democratic institutions are most vulnerable when leaders prioritize political victories over the stability of the system. Weaponizing the livelihoods of federal civil servants and gambling the integrity of the national security system on a budget wager serves as a profound warning. It demonstrates that the most robust institutions of a superpower can be weakened, not by hostile external forces, but by the very stubbornness and habitual disregard for core governance principles emanating from within the highest echelons of power.